Salt and Straw's Candied Walnut Cheesecake. A lot to say about this one in so many different ways. First off, well, we've had the Parker House roll, then we dipped it to some sweet potato casserole, sweet potato pie type flavor. Then we had the main course, the main dish, the caramelized turkey and the cranberry sauce. Now we're gonna finish this pack off with two desserts, a candied walnut cheesecake, and we've got a pumpkin ginger snap pie, shall we call it? I'll play on that in the freezer for the next review. And quickly, I want to say this bad boy clocks in at 400 calories a serving. If you don't know, then these pints now have 3 servings in them instead of 4. So we're talking 1,200 calories for this pint, around 90 grams of fat. That is sturdy. AKA, we are in for a real treat. So what's this flavor all about, right? It's basically a walnut butter with a little bit of molasses, ice cream base. And then they have this graham cracker crumble. And lastly, they swirl in this molasses forward cheesecake. I'm trying to give you a sneak peek here. You maybe can tell down here in this bottom corner, down at the very bottom actually, you can tell it's a little different color. That's a chunk of cheesecake. Obviously the graham crumble and then your walnut butter base. So starting there, it's, you know, I've got a coworker of mine that makes some really good cookies. Shout out to Ron Barnes. But he always talks about the walnuts in his cookies, that he doesn't use them much because it's such a complex, like a deep, powerful flavor. And that's kind of what you're getting here. It is, it's heavy on the bitterness. It's complex. It almost has this tanginess to it. It's a sharp flavor. Now the base, because it has some molasses in it, is still fairly sweet, but you can definitely notice, like, this is one of those flavors I like to call when you're adulting. This is not your kid-friendly flavor. This is what you appreciate as an adult, scooping some really good ice cream. Then Salt and Straw swirls in these, I'm gonna call them chunks of molasses cheesecake. So hear me out. First off, here's a whole chunk. I know it looks like the ice cream, but this is a whole chunk of cheesecake. Dadgummit. Pretty cool. Large chunks. Wouldn't expect anything less from Salt and Straw. There's more chunks as I come across them. I mean, as I dig down. Sorry, I'm getting very excited. Here's the minor issue. I don't know if you can tell here with this chunk at the top. Texturally, it's not the greatest. You can see here there's a little bit of, like, I don't want to call it iciness, but it's harder than it looks harder than it should be. And I get it, because I'm sure freezing cheesecake, you know, that's a tough thing to accomplish, to, you know, have it the right texture. What's funny is I can tell it's a great cheesecake because I scoop it with my spoon and it's a little tough. It fights back a little bit of that iciness, but as soon as it hits your mouth, it melts. It's soft. It's moist. It's gooey. It's just like, you know, even a little fluffy. It's just the perfect cheesecake texture. So small, very small flaw that's probably pretty unavoidable to freeze in ice cream. The flavor, I was talking about how the walnut is, you know, complex, such a flavor in the base. With the molasses cheesecake, I'm really appreciating it more than I ever realized, because typically I'm just a plain cheesecake guy. I don't mess with my cheesecake. I was worried the molasses, I gotta stop eating it and I gotta talk. I was worried the molasses was gonna kind of pull from the flavor, but it actually works really well. The cheesecake has just the same amount of tanginess as ever. And there's just a tiniest hint of molasses that comes through, and sure, it milds out a bit of that tanginess, but it's still very cheesecake forward. It's a great touch, basically. There's definitely more like of that caramelized molasses flavor in the base than the cheesecake, but it's much appreciated in both. And what's a cheesecake without the crust, right? This graham crust. And I can say 100% without a doubt, this crust, graham cracker crust, is perfection. It's not overly buttery, but the honey, the molasses, the graham flavor is quite noticeable. It's quite powerful considering all the other, walnut, cheesecake, molasses flavors in the base. Look, I can easily sum this up. I'm wowed again. We're pretty much, 4 for 4 that are worth a scoop. This one is up there too. I'm gonna give it the slight edge over sweet potato pie. I don't think it's quite as good as the butter house roll or the caramelized turkey and cranberry sauce. However, it's executed very well. It's a deep molasses flavor. It's nutty, it's rich, it's a little tangy. It's everything you could want in a candied walnut cheesecake, which typically when I hear walnut, I kind of I'm not thrilled. Even cheesecake, I like cheesecake, I'm not going out of my way for it. So this flavor I was kind of like, it'll be a cool scoop. Floored my expectations. Salt and straw is absolutely killing it. This is another flavor that screams Thanksgiving. Candied walnut cheesecake gets an 8.5 out of 10.